something's wrong with me, so I need to accommodate others. Sometimes when people are coming to us with their emotions, if we feel uncomfortable with that particular emotion, we want to immediately change it. Because if you are a frustrated child, if you are a frustrated friend, and there's a particular circumstance that's leading you to be frustrated that makes me feel uncomfortable, I don't want to sit in this frustration either. Oh, God won't give you anything that you can't handle. And the person is like, well, I can't handle this right now, so I need something else.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Decide Darlings podcast. I am Erin Lopez.
And I'm Lisa Cox. Welcome.
Okay, quick update, y'all. We are still on baby watch over here on the I Decide Darlings podcast. For those of you who haven't listened, Lisa is about to become a dolly, a grandmother, and it's literally like
hours away.
Hours.
Probably a day. She'll go to the hospital to be induced. And so depending on how long the process takes for her, everyone's different. We'll hopefully have our little grandbaby boy by tomorrow. So I'm so happy.
Well, we're going to have him on the I Decide Darlings podcast.
Yeah, because we've talked about him for so long. Ever since the day I found out she was pregnant, I just have been driving everybody crazy about it because I'm so excited to be Grandma Dolly.
No, we love it. Many prayers. We can't wait to hear.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, today we're super excited and grateful to have our guest here. And Minaa B, she is going to share with us lots of insight and just an incredible topic that it's so relevant for today and that we need to be talking about. And I'm so thrilled that she's going to share with us. So Minaa B is a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author of Owning Our Struggles. She is also the founder of a mental health consulting practice where she collaborates with organizations to help them develop psychological safety. I'm excited and interested in learning more about that. Additionally, Minaa is the host of the podcast Mindful with Minaa and is also a member of the Mental Health Advisory Committee for Wondermind, a mental fitness company co-founded by Selena Gomez. An expert in her field, Minaa has been featured in various media outlets, including Red Table Talk, Peace of Mind with Taraji. You'll have to let me know if I said that correctly.
Yes.
Okay. Oprah Daily, Katie Couric Media, Essence, and more. Minaa currently resides in New York City. Minaa, welcome to the I Decide Darlings podcast. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so thrilled. So I first want to start with just who you are. We just want to learn about Minaa. How did you get into this field? And just give us a little bit of your backstory so that everybody can get sort of up close and personal with you.
Yeah, so I studied social work. I went to NYU, and I was decided to become a social worker simply because of the experiences that I had as a child related to my mental health that I didn't fully understand were mental health conditions until I went to high school and I started to learn a little more about depression and anxiety. And that's when I realized, oh, I have depression and anxiety. And I really wanted to just understand why I had it and why it wasn't talked about culturally and why it wasn't something that I honestly knew much about. it made me very intrigued with the human experience. And so, as a result of that, I knew I wanted to do something related to human behavior, psychology, and just understanding the way our brains work and how we
Mhm.
thrive in society. And so, that led me to pursuing my master's in social work. And here I am doing the work that I have always been passionate about.
Oh my gosh. So you were raised in New York City, and did you have a rough upbringing?
I wouldn't say it was rough, but I was bullied as a child, and I was a very highly sensitive child.
Mhm.
So being bullied did not work well with my personality.
Mm.
And that really shaped my self esteem. It made me feel ostracized. It made me feel unloved. It made me feel like I struggled to belong as a child because it happened very early on in life. I would say it started around first grade, and it was throughout all of elementary school that I was experiencing bullying. And I experienced bullying for things that did make me different. So I'm 5'10" and I was always tall. So I
Mhm.
was always the tallest kid in my class. And so people teased me for that. And I also recognized that I was the tallest, for example. So I thought something was wrong with me. People teased me for a variety of things that I just didn't have the tools or the language to understand. Children are being children.
Mhm.
And I just didn't understand how to cope with a lot of those things. And so in my household, my parents are from Panama. And I think that cultural difference as well, they perceived mental health as something that was related to drug abuse or homelessness. They
Mhm.
didn't fully understand anxiety. So when I would talk about the bullying, they did their best to give me a pep talk, but it also felt a little dismissive. And again, I was a highly sensitive child. So I
Mhm.
don't necessarily feel like they had the language to give me the
Mhm.
coping skills and techniques that I needed as a kid, which left me feeling quite alone in my
Mhm.
family system as well.
Mhm. It would be very isolating.
Very. It
Yes.
was.
Yeah. My heart goes out to that for a lot of people, and I do feel so grateful for people like you, Mina, who have opened the conversation and are, with your podcast and all the different things that you do, to really, really talk about it, because I have many people in my life that felt the same isolation, because their families weren't taught how to talk about it, and they didn't understand it, and it wasn't their fault. They just didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know, and so they couldn't help their child. And now that child has PTSD and trauma from it. So I love what you're doing, and I'm sorry that it was tough growing up with that bullying, but I'm glad you're where you are today, to where you can serve and help so many people with it.
Well, and I think that, like you said, Lisa, it's parenting hardest job in the world, and we don't know what we don't know. And I love that now we live in this world where I think it's almost heightened because of social media and, everything. And so, Mina, like the path that you're taking of allowing these conversations and giving parents the tools to have those conversations, absolutely doing that. So is this something that like first of all, I want to point out too, that I think when we find our passion and turn it into our purpose, like that to me is something that the fact that you were able to recognize that and say that, this is something that I'm experiencing and then turn it into a career,
Mhm.
then it doesn't feel like a job. It's our purpose in life. And I'm assuming that's probably how you feel.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It definitely feels like there's a lot of meaning to what I
Mhm.
do because of my experiences, and I know the impact it's
Mhm.
having. And so I am very grateful. I
Mhm.
think about it all the time that I get to do
Mhm.
the thing that I really, really love
Yeah.
and is meaningful to me. And like you said, it's rooted in my purpose. And I'm
Mhm.
really happy that I get to do this work.
Mhm.
Can I tell you, on a side note, I am 6 feet tall, and I was 5'11" in fifth grade.
Mm.
And that is like a giant in the fifth grade. And I was so self conscious because I was ruthlessly teased. And I fully understand that feeling. And, my parents would make light of it. And it wasn't bullying. It was definitely, I was just being teased for my height. But to this day, when I talk to anybody about my size, I always say, oh yeah, I'm a giant. I come out like my first instinct is to make it very negative because that's the way I felt about it as a child. When actually I feel very blessed to be tall. I feel blessed to be healthy every single day. And I don't take that for granted. But I have that in my head because of that teasing. And so when you were talking about the height, I was like, oh, we had the same deal when it comes to that. So I just had to
Thank
share that.
you.
People don't know how tall I am on Zoom because I just look like I'm normal, you know. But when I stand up, I'm 6 feet tall, and put any shoes on, I'm 6'2". So
it is
Same.
funny when we meet people, they're like, oh, she's tall. And I'm no small drink of water either, but you know.
you are a small drink of water, but you're tall as well.
I'm tall. I'm
Yeah.
tall. Yeah. Let's be honest too. Kids are mean, like it's, kids are mean. So like, Mina, is that something that you help people with, like, because I tell my kids, I have 2 teenagers, that's a whole different podcast in itself. But having teenagers, it's a constant, kids are mean, people are mean, let's be honest. But, they also, it's a defense mechanism, I think, for a lot of people. So, I mean, I'm curious for selfish reasons, like, I know you have clients and, it's a different world now that, like, what tools do you give people to understand that it's kind of, maybe a terrible analogy, but like when a boy picks on you and he picked, this and that and everything, I remember my mom always teaching me too, like he probably likes you, because they don't know how to react. Like we're not given the tools. And I loved diving into your podcast because you not only are helping people, but I think all of us love practical tools that you can give us, for somebody listening too, that are saying, you know what, like I do maybe get picked on or bullied. Like, are there things that popped to your head about tools that you've taken on yourself, but like tools that you help others when we face things like this?
Yeah, I think that there's numerous things. First, I like to work with parents and honestly just people related to our conditioning and our biases when it comes to gender and the stereotypes that we have around that. Because it's even interesting, as Lisa was pointing out, like with your height, like you perceive your height as a negative, but men are not taught to perceive their height as a negative thing. And so women, when we're told that that is not normal. We're told that's not sexy. We're told that something is wrong. So therefore we can lead with this negative ideology of who we are. I also have this thing that I stopped doing, but I noticed that when I take a photo, for example, with someone who's shorter than me, I will literally bend down to their height.
My
And
whole
I've had
life.
to learn, yes. And what I didn't realize too is the conditioning of something's wrong with me, so I need to accommodate others to make others comfortable. Even in the midst of taking a photo, I have to shrink myself to make sure that I am at height with someone who's shorter than me versus me just standing tall and them having to embrace and accept that you're standing next to a tall person.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
so I think that's a big part of it too, because a lot of this is mental conditioning. So, Erin, even when you point out a boy is bothering you in school, it's really important to ask the child, well, how does that actually make you feel? First of all, instead of imposing or projecting an ideology onto it, he must like you, he must this. What does it look like for us to ask questions such as, well, does that make you feel comfortable? How does that make you feel? And giving them emotional language, right? Language around their emotions. Did that frustrate you? Did that make you happy? Because I know when that happens to me sometimes as an adult, it makes me really upset. And that's okay to express if you're really upset about that. So when that happened to you in school today, what came up for you? And what would you have wanted to say? Did you say it to the kid? Why didn't you say it? Were you afraid? What did you think was going to happen? And when we use those scripts, it really gives the child an understanding that their feelings matter, because a lot of us don't realize. I always tell people I end up having to work with the adults who come to my office because of things that they did not get the opportunity to do in childhood. And so now I have adults in my office trying to figure out what boundaries that they can erect because they were raised as being people pleasers. And so they were raised being told, oh, he's just making fun. Oh, just ignore it. Instead of asking the child, did it make you mad? Did it make you angry? Were you okay with it? Was it
Mhm.
something that, didn't bother you? Helping them have choice over how they feel
Mhm.
instead of trying to define how a child is supposed to feel.
Mhm.
Another thing I think is important too that everyone does, whether you're a parent or a friend, is sometimes when people are coming to us with their emotions, if we feel uncomfortable with that particular emotion, we want to immediately change it. Because if you are a frustrated child, if you are a frustrated friend, and there's a particular circumstance that's leading you to be frustrated that makes me feel uncomfortable, I don't want to sit in this frustration either. I don't want to be uncomfortable either. So let's just move on to toxic positivity. Just focus on he must like you. Focus on something good because right now, your situation is also making me uncomfortable, and I don't know what to do with that discomfort other than trying to find a way to change it into a more positive emotion instead of embracing that this is really hard for the both of us.
Mm.
And you came to me with something that I actually don't know how to sit with or handle, and maybe we're going to have to figure it out together. And I think that is honestly one of the most valuable things that a parent can do for their child because that is what psychological safety looks like. Children need to know that their parents are psychologically safe. What that means is I can come to you with my complex emotions and I can feel seen, heard, and understood when I come to you with very difficult things. You don't make it about you. You don't minimize it, you don't dismiss it, you listen to it, you hold space with it, and you work with it. You work through it with me. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the most practical things that a lot of children in my generation missed out on, right? Us millennials, us older millennials. And
Mhm.
I even hear a cry for people who are Gen Z, which is why they're turning to social media, having these parasocial relationships, very glued to technology, because there's this lack of intimacy that some of them feel they're having in their household because of a variety of things, right? And so those are some practical things that I think is the first foundational step because when you have psychological safety and psychological intimacy, it now makes space for vulnerability, trust, and deeper understanding in the relationship. But if I don't feel safe, if my body says this person is threatening, this person minimizes you, this person dismisses you, then how am I going to co regulate with you? And
Mhm.
children have to co regulate through their parents. But if the parent is not regulating their own emotion, then you're going to trigger my nervous system as a child. And now I might use those parasocial relationships as a way to gauge my nervous system because maybe my mother, father, or whoever my caretaker is doesn't make me feel safe. So I'm turning to social media. I'm turning to Minecraft. I'm turning to all of these different things where I'm finding safety because the people around me are not doing their own emotional regulation work.
That's
Mina.
good. I would like to go back and be a parent all over again so I can do better
I'm
after
literally
that.
like, oh Lord, she's talking to me. Like,
Oh God. Oh
but Mina,
geez.
it's so good, and I mean so good because I think the three of us, right here, right now, like we were raised in the sense of like, brush it under the rug, don't talk
Mhm.
about it, and so hearing you say when they come to us with things like this, and again, I think it could be like you said, in a friend, and a spouse, and anybody. And instead of just saying like, oh, it's fine, or oh, this, I love that you say, how does it make you feel? Or what did you
Mhm.
feel? And I don't think that comes innately natural to many
Mhm.
of us. And so I love that because I think we all need to be able to say to somebody and ourselves sometimes, well, how did I feel when I snapped like that or I responded to that? I love that. You said something that I'm curious, toxic positivity.
Mm.
Explain that because I was like, toxic positivity.
Mhm.
Yes. So toxic positivity pretty much is when we utilize positive euphemisms or we engage in positive ideologies to dismiss feelings of discomfort. And so a lot of the times we might hear quotes like everything happens for a reason because we have a really hard time grappling with reality or sitting with grief.
Mm.
Another thing that you might hear people, especially if they come from a religious background, they might say, "Oh, God won't give you anything that you can't handle." And the person is like, "Well, I can't handle this right now. So I
Mhm.
need something else." Right? Like, this is actually hard and I don't know how to handle it. And so that phrase is not really helping me. And so what happens is, it goes back to what I shared earlier. Often, when I find the reason why people engage in toxic positivity is, again, discomfort is hard for everyone.
Mm.
And so if you come to me with something that is deep, heavy, and just filled and riddled with grief and sadness, I now have to figure out how to sit and sort through those emotions that I probably spent a lot of time running away from in my own personal life. Now you want me to sit with it with you, but I don't even sit with that feeling myself. And so if I don't know how to sit with my own grief, it might be really hard for me to sit with you in your own grief. And so it's easier for us to just find positive solutions to everything and slap it on every circumstance instead of owning that this is hard.
Mhm.
Some things in life are hard. Some things in life are uncomfortable. Some things in life make us very angry. Some
Mhm.
things in life cause us deep pain and it leaves wounds. And until we sit with that and acknowledge it, we're not going to give ourselves the ability to heal, because healing requires us to face the truth about what we're experiencing, but also about what we're feeling. And if we keep denying and dismissing those emotions, trying to get to the finish line, then we're never going to have the tools we need to be resilient or to cope when hardship and adversity does arise. And often, when we're going through hard things, we just want positivity to be at our doorstep immediately, instead of figuring out, while I'm in my state of grief, what does it look like for me to mourn something? What does it look like for me to sit in this deep sadness? And how can I also focus on developing community and deepening my relationships with people in the midst of this hardship? Because even in hardship, I can still develop close bonds with someone,
Mhm.
and so, and I can also develop a deeper bond with myself because I can recognize things that I have the ability to overcome. And I can also recognize certain truths that I didn't even realize existed. And that's why this loss is so painful to me, because
Mhm.
it's opening up something to me to help me recognize, maybe that person or that relationship or that job opportunity, it was meaningful to me. And that's letting me see that this loss hurts me so much because this thing was actually so meaningful to me. And now I have to sit in this and I have to rest in it and I have to embrace it. And by doing so, I can finally get to a place of acceptance of that it happened and also figure out how to move forward.
Mm. I had such a crazy experience as a parent that this brings back this memory of, we had three deaths that were very closely related. Either a friend of my daughter, it was all with one daughter, our youngest daughter, who's a New Yorker, lives in New York. But when she was little, there were three deaths that happened, and it happened within 2 weeks, and they all somehow were connected to her. I mean, as
Mm,
far as one of her school friends, one of her school friends' brothers, and then a school friend's dad. And it all happened so fast. And I found myself doing exactly what you're talking, that I was toxic, trying to be positive and trying to keep her up, and everything's okay. I was just trying to do what I knew how to do, instead of just sitting with her in her grief and in my grief. And instead I was trying to be the sunshine in her life to keep her okay. And even my other daughter we were all just so scared because it was just too much. It just felt like too much grief too fast for this young group of friends. And so I found myself landed in the hospital with an anxiety attack, which I had never had before. I thought I was having a heart attack or a stroke, and my husband took me in, and they ran all the tests, thousands of dollars worth of tests on me. And this beautiful doctor came in, and she said, so she put her hand on me and she said, "Lisa, I just have to ask you, you're the healthiest sick person I've ever checked out." And she said, "So why
mhm,
don't you tell me what's going on in your life?" And that's when I, busted out crying and opened up to her, and she's like, you're just not processing this grief, and you're probably not helping your child process it either. And like, so when you're talking about all of this is what I'm thinking, the mistakes that we've made before, but not knowing, how to sit in that sadness or sit with someone you love instead of trying to just make it okay for them. It's kind of innate. I grew up a people pleaser. I'm the middle
Mhm.
child. I was the peacemaker. And so I found myself in that exact situation doing it wrong, or not
Mhm.
doing it the best way to heal everybody. So your words mean a lot to me.
Thank you. And I love something that you said when you were talking about that story, when you said that this is too much for a child to handle.
Mhm.
And it helps us really unpack the duality of our emotions and that two opposing truths can exist at the same time. It
Mhm.
is too much for a child to handle, but it's also happening.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, despite the fact that it is too much, that is truth, but it is also happening, which is also truth.
Mm.
And I think that when we make space for those two things to exist, it also helps us heal a little better because it doesn't have to be, it's not supposed to happen. It doesn't have to be that, oh, children are resilient, so they're going to be okay. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can be, this is so hard. You're
Mhm.
so young. You shouldn't have to go through this, but
Mhm.
you are. And so we're going to hold space for the fact that both of these things are happening right now in the present, and
Mhm.
we're only going to have to acknowledge both things so that we can move forward. And I think that applies in our adult lives as well, in all situations where there are times where we experience such deep, complex emotions where two truths are happening at once. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to pick one instead of realizing, no, both are in reality.
Mhm.
Both of those realities are existing at the same time. And when we embrace both realities, we can also figure out how to move forward.
Oh, it's so powerful.
Mm.
So powerful.
I feel like too, like I wish I would have heard these words. Like these words are so powerful now, but I feel like the older I've gotten, you find this peace in knowing, I love how you phrased it, like the reality of both worlds is
Yeah.
this is happening right now,
Mhm.
and I know that those words can speak to so many because I wish that so many would know, even as young girls and young teenagers and boys and girls, that it is, but this is the what we've been dealt right now. So what are we going to do? So I'm curious, like we love anybody who's written a book because we know how hard it is. And like, we love to celebrate an author that you are.
Yeah.
Tell us how you got to that point of writing Owning Our Struggles and tell us, our audience, the gist of why they need your book.
hmm So I've always wanted to be a writer. That was also a childhood dream of mine that
Aw,
I'm very happy came true.
Yay.
And
congratulations.
thank you so much. And I actually got the concept for Owning Our Struggles in 2020. That is when I wrote the proposal for the book. And honestly, I think we all know the different things that were happening that year, the coronavirus pandemic, then the murder of George Floyd, all of the differences regarding how people were treating COVID and how they felt about COVID, and then the Asian American hate crimes that were happening predominantly in New York City, and just so many different things were happening where people were literally afraid of people. And I remember being a therapist that year thinking to myself, when the pandemic dies down, how in the world are we going to integrate back together as a society? Because I felt like we were living in such disconnected times where people felt so disconnected from each other, where people felt afraid of each other, where people were angry with each other. And my thought process was, how are we going to collectively come together after this? And I thought to myself, well, why don't I write a book about it? And so, Owning Our Struggles, the premise of it is how to heal from trauma through community care. And the way I wrote the chapters is chapter 1 dives into childhood trauma. And then chapters 2 through 7 takes the reader on a journey into adulthood and into different facets of our adult lives, from dealing with emotional maturity and developing into an adult, as well as our family system and exploring how we operate within our family, also exploring our relationship to work culture, and then also exploring our relationship to friends and romantic partners and the different ways that we try to develop community in the first place.
Mm.
And so I wanted to just give people a guide on how they can bridge self care to community care, because I do believe I centered healing is important. And I centered healing is when we're focusing on ourselves, we're focusing on our personal growth, personal transformation, and really trying to evolve as individuals. But we don't heal to exist in a vacuum is what I talk about in the book. We heal so that we can learn to integrate into community and build supportive, thriving networks of people that we can lean on. And so this is why we need social capital. This is why we need community. This is why we need people. But I think a lot of people at that time were missing tools on how to practice we-centered healing, which is that collective healing that we need. So, how do I bring my full self to community, especially if I'm wounded, if I'm harmed, if I have PTSD, if I have anxiety, because that's going to manifest in my relationships. So, how can I do this I centered healing so that I can now engage in that we centered healing, which involves community, connection, and friendships?
Mhm. Oh, it's so good. I just love that. I feel like I I look back to that time when you were writing the book in 2020, and I think about how strongly it changed so many of us. It changed. I still feel like I'm not as involved in the community or even my circle of friends as I used to be before 2020. And we used to be a lot more social. And so I mean, I can't imagine the sort of the ripple effect that you have seen being a counselor, in the world, because I know even in my little world in my town, it's just different now. It's just I feel different about it. And I haven't actually reformed um strong connections in my community, and that's just almost by choice. I've just chosen to sort of stay in my little bubble. Is that terrible? Or stay in my world of work and family. And but I know how much, and I am a big follower of the Blue Zones. The book, The Blue Zones, and how important community is. It's number one for longevity. To live a long time, you need to be involved. And so I love the concept of this book, and I definitely need to get it and read it, which I haven't done yet, but I'm going to.
Thank you.
So good.
Okay, I have to take us down this because Lisa will appreciate this. But okay, Mina, Lisa and I are best friends. We love to do all things like how well do we know each other, all of these things all the time. Okay, one of your podcasts was about signs you're in a healthy friendship.
Oh.
So, so tell us some signs, for others to hear, because I think that you bring so much light to how we can be better, how we can listen, how we can talk. And then I loved this too, which is signs we're in a healthy friendship. So in honor of Lisa and I and our friendship and our healthiness that we bring together, share with our audience some of your signs. Because again, I love this podcast. You guys have got to go back and listen to it. I think it was in the summer. Share with us some signs, because I love that. Because a lot of times I feel like we focus on not necessarily the negative, but how can we be better? How can we, but this I love too, because it was hold on, take a second and recognize your healthy friendships and relationships.
Yeah, so here are some signs that I will share with you all. The first big sign is that there is reciprocity in the friendship. When there is a lack of reciprocity, it creates an imbalanced relationship where a lot of the intention, labor, and effort falls on one person to maintain the relationship. Now, we can't do anything by ourselves. We cannot maintain any kind of relationship by ourselves, right? And so when there is reciprocity, that means that you are receiving just as much as you give. The core thing I want people to remember, though, is that sometimes reciprocity is not you're receiving exactly what you give. Sometimes you're receiving things that are different. And that is also okay, because your friend is not you. So there are certain strengths that your friend has that that you may not be able to give them. Right. And so it's about recognizing that I give, but I also receive. And there are times where I give things in this friendship that maybe my friend just doesn't have the skill or the capacity to give me, but they make up in so many other areas that I love being in relationship with them anyway. And that is also a sign that whatever it is that they can't give me, I just get that need met in a different friendship.
Mhm.
Right. And so
So
that
cool.
is another sign that
Mhm.
you are in a healthy relationship when there is compromise and flexibility and you're allowing people to show up with the strengths and the abilities that they have. And so you're saying to yourself, what are some things that I'm getting from this person that I can see as their strengths? I see they're giving me their best. I see that this is what they have the capacity to give me at this time. And again, as I said earlier, there are certain needs that I have that I might have to get in a different friendship. This is why we have to have a spectrum of friendships, not just one friend that we rely on for any and everything.
Mhm.
So when you are able to engage in compromise and flexibility, that is also how you learn to grow together. Growing together is another essential aspect of a healthy relationship. It's showing that you embrace the changes that your friend is making, and you're also embracing and acknowledging that your friend has needs, goals, and desires. And as they meet those goals, they are going to evolve into different versions of themselves. An example of that would be I always talk about think of a friendship where both women are single but maybe one of those women desires partnership or having a child. And so that means when that person does become married or does become a mother, they're going to show up differently because now they have responsibilities that they didn't have before. Growing together looks like, all right, well, you have a newborn. And so maybe we're not going to hang out as late as we used to. We're not going to do certain activities that we used to do. And so I'm going to be flexible in this relationship because I'm going to meet you where you are. You're not the 25-year-old that you used to be where we could bar hop or do all of these different things. We're older. You have a kid, you have a partner, maybe you have a really demanding job. You quit your 9 to 5 and you became an entrepreneur. Your life just looks so different. So, the same way we expect our partner to grow with us, we also have to grow with our friend. And we have to acknowledge too that we're going to be in different stages of life. So, what does it look like for me to literally meet you where you are? Based off what you need. Another sign of a healthy friendship is that you can communicate with one another. You can talk about your hard feelings. Sometimes you are the person initiating the hard conversation, and sometimes you're going to be the person who's on the other end of the hard conversation. But the only way that we can repair ruptures in a friendship is by talking about them because too often we experience something difficult and we secretly start to push that friend away, or we just terminate the friendship, we ghost them, we do all of these things instead of saying, you know what, I need to let Erin know that she really hurt my feelings when she said that to me today, or I need to let Lisa know that I miss her. I miss you, Lisa. Like, I really want to see you. And maybe you're not aware because you're caught up in your own world, in your own life. And I need to communicate. I also need to be vulnerable in my friendship and say, I really miss you. We have not had time together. I know you're busy. I know you have the kids. I know the grandbaby is here. Can we hop on the phone for 30 minutes this week? Because I miss you. There
Mhm.
is vulnerability and intimacy in that friendship. And you're not allowed to say, you either hurt me, and you're also not afraid to say, I really miss my friend. And I want to be vulnerable here and tell you I miss you and figure out how we can stay connected to each other. A last thing that I will share is accountability, owning when you mess up, and not only owning it, but doing the work of changing to move forward. Understanding that maybe your friend said to you, you know, when I talk to you about certain things, I realize you dismiss me. And you can have an open conversation around it and you can learn from it and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to start doing differently. Thank you for bringing this to me. And I'm also going to hold myself accountable in this friendship by acknowledging the mistakes I've made, but also figuring out what can I do differently moving forward. Every relationship needs accountability because nobody wants to be in a relationship with someone who refuses to recognize their actions and how they treat people. And so I find that those are the common things that come up in a healthy friendship. And at the foundation of that healthy friendship is trust, vulnerability, respect, and psychological safety. Those four things are the foundation that now leads to all the other things that I mentioned. And when you have those things, you can have a very sacred relationship that feels sustainable and fun to be in.
You're
That
such a good friend, I bet, Minaa.
I bet you
Oh,
are.
thank you.
Well, and I feel like you
Thank
could
you.
also, I mean, not everything that you said we could fit into our marriages, but very
I thought
similar.
about
I mean,
that.
like when you said, then maybe you need to find another friend to take care of one of your needs. You probably shouldn't do that with finding another
Right. Don't
spouse.
go find another spouse, everyone.
But I really like that. And I feel Aaron and I have been very, very blessed and happy to have wonderful husbands, and we both have very good marriages, and we're really grateful for that. And we're not just saying that, like we both really do. And but I feel like when I listen to you talk about friendships, I see so much of what you're recommending on how to be a good friend and how to also be a good spouse.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
type of communication has definitely kept our marriage happy for 35 years and hopefully for 35 more. So I love that. Tell us, Minaa, you are phenomenal at what you do. I mean, I just listening to you today,
Yes.
and we're just grateful for your time. Tell us a little bit before we close out about you're on the foundation with Selena Gomez. And of course, many of us know who Selena Gomez is and are really grateful for her coming forward with her struggles to make it another person that people love, that they could say, oh, well, if Selena, is being honest, maybe I could go be honest about what I'm going through, things like that. So will you share a little bit about being on that foundation and about that?
Yeah. So, Wondermind is a mental fitness platform, and the goal of it is to simply democratize mental health and give people accessible resources to take care of their mental health, their well being, but most importantly, enhance mental fitness. And mental fitness pretty much is getting the tools that you need to build resiliency so that you are able to bounce back from your struggles and that you are able to have coping tools and strategies to manage different things that come up in life related to hardship and adversity. And so it's been such a pleasure working on their advisory board and really doing the work that we can to make sure that we're putting out evidence-based research and really giving people practical tools and strategies to focus on how to take care of themselves. So the website is built with different moods that people can go through, sort through whether you're feeling anxious or depressed or sad. And by doing so, you can literally just get the resources that you need to take care of yourself. One of the things that I love about Wondermind is that we're also trying to make this very accessible because we also know access to care can be expensive. And
Mhm.
so we've done things in the past that are free for our community. It has been in person, it's also been virtual. And so I really encourage people to, check out the Wondermind website if you are in need of free, tangible resources. That's something that's also available to people.
Oh, that is incredible. Wonderful.
Well, speaking of, Minaa, how else can people find you? Because you are such a gift. Where the book, tell them all of the things of how we need to find Minaa B.
Thank you. So you can order a copy of my book, Owning Our Struggles. It's available across all major retailers from Amazon to Target to Walmart, wherever you buy your books. You can also listen to it on Audible or download it on Kindle. You can also find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Threads, as well as LinkedIn at Minaa B. And you can also listen to my podcast, Mindful with Minaa, which is available across all podcast platforms.
I could listen to you all day
Oh my
long.
gosh. Yeah. I kept thinking, I was like, you're so good.
Oh yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Really. I feel like you have such an incredible heart, and just the way that you present. I just feel like we have so much to learn from you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. You have been a gift in our world and in our audience's world today. And everyone who needs to check out Wondermind, I love that, and order her book, you guys. It's something that we all need to read and be learning more about, is this incredible woman and what she's done and how she's serving the world. So thank you, Minaa.
Thank you both.
Oh, guys, this was such a good one. So many things I know I even want to go back and listen to again. So
Mhm.
share this out. Gosh, this is like share this out with anyone because this was
Mhm.
so good. So Minaa B, thank you for joining us on the I Decide Darlings podcast. We will forever be friends now.
Yes,
And everybody,
I
thank
hope.
you. Oh, yes, for sure. Thank you for joining us today on the I Decide Darlings podcast. We are on baby watch, grandbaby watch, and we will keep you posted, y'all. We will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You've been listening to the I Decide Darlings podcast. If this podcast touched your heart, please share it with your friends and family right after you subscribe yourself.
Don't forget to head over to iDecideBook.com and grab a copy of our favorite book and daily journal. As always, thank you for being here, and we can't wait for you to hear our next episode.